Welcome to Parents Tool Talk Radio with your host, Jody Johnston Powell, licensed social worker, certified family life educator, second-generation parent educator, and author of the award-winning book, The Parents Tool Shop, the universal blueprint for building a healthy family. For over 25 years, Jody has been training parents and family service professionals nationwide and serving as a parenting expert to the media worldwide. Now, through the Parents Tool Talk show, Jody shares her practical advice and introduces you to other experts who can give you proven, effective advice on the issues that matter most to parents. So get ready to be informed, entertained, and enlightened as we join Jody now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's Parents Tool Talk. And I am really excited this month to be inviting and introducing to you a new friend, a fellow parent educator. And when I heard about his book, I immediately asked if he would come on and tell you all about it. We're like-minded enough that I would call him tool shop informed in terms of what he teaches is very consistent with what I teach. But there's an aspect and several aspects that are really kind of different. And so we had a conversation first, and I felt like what he teaches is very complementary to what I teach in Tool Shop. And so I thought I would invite him on and help spread the word about his new book called Growing into Your Parenting Role. This is Bill Shackelford. He's really a pretty prolific writer. He's written over 50 publications in professional journals. This book, Growing into Your Parenting Role, is actually his third book. His second book on parenting, and in it, he and his wife Renee share tips and techniques they use while raising their own now grown successful children. We both are parents of adults and empty nesters and all that great stuff where we have a chance to reflect back and kind of mine from it our wisdom and things that we have learned. And what they found was that through coaching, mentoring, and kind of playing on the same team, they were able to break through to their children in really profound and meaningful ways. So if we were in an audience, I'd be telling everyone, give Bill a round of applause, welcome him to Parents Tool Talk. So let me go ahead and first just let you kind of say whatever you want to say as kind of your opening remarks, because I have a couple questions I actually want to ask you as we head into talking about your book.
Well, hello, Jody. Thanks for the audience here today, and thank you all as well for coming out. Thank you for being here. I am actually in my book, right up front, I say very clearly, I'm not a parenting expert. I don't have any training in parenting or the things you would normally think about in terms of having a background for doing this work. But I've traveled many paths, and one path that I traveled was a 50-year path with my wife, Renee, who was my high school sweetheart, actually. And doing that path, that travel, I learned a lot about parenting and shared that in the book that we have here. So I love talking about it. I love the idea of passing on to the next generation and generation beyond that, the things I've learned about parenting over time, and excited to be here today as well.
Well, and thank you for being here. You know, in the introduction to your book, you shared that you and your wife, Renee, aren't child psychologists or therapists or anyone professionals that one would tend to think of going to for parenting information, which I have to add isn't necessarily an accurate assumption. Just because someone is a therapist doesn't necessarily mean that they've learned about parenting skills. And actually, child psychologists, and I have known quite a few, have told me they learn about assessments, they learn about diagnosis, but they don't necessarily automatically learn about parenting skills. So I always am trying to advocate for the field of parent education, and that, you don't have to be a psychologist or a therapist to be able to do that. But still, you took a really different path in terms of developing your focus on parenting. So maybe share a little bit about what your journey was, kind of your background and your journey to this book.
Well, let me start in the middle there. I have a bachelor's degree in physics and a master's in nuclear engineering. It has nothing to do with parenting and is a whole miles away from the whole parenting issue. But my parenting journey started really very early. At 14 years old, I met Renee, who became my wife, but we started dating in high school at 14. We got married when we were 20, and our first child when we were 24. So I actually had 10 years with her before our first child was born. And during those 10 years, we talked about everything parenting related, relationship related. and laid a very, very strong foundation for our relationship and for our parenting role as well. When you think about it, we actually, most couples, when they're in their 5th year or 10th year of marriage, they start figuring out how to raise their children. We did all that before we had our first I do ceremony. So that gave us a strong foundation, allowed us to enter the parenting role different from most parents. We were there with tools and tips. We were there on the same page about how to raise our kids, how many kids we're going to have, when we're going to have them, how many years apart. We had all those discussions and more in those early years. So it allowed us to have a style that was more collaborative, more engaging between ourselves and our kids as well, and set us on a journey where our friends and neighbors looked at us in terms of role models for them in terms of parenting. Back in the day, they used to call us the real life Huxtable family, which was a real, pat on the back kind of thing, because the Cosby Show was the #1 parenting show anywhere in the world at that point in time. My journey took a couple of turns along the way. About 10 years into our marriage, we decided, well, you know what? People are talking about our parenting style. We need to write a book. And so we sat down and wrote out an outline for a book. To kind of date this is back in the 80s. We typed it out on an Apple IIe computer and used a printer, one of those form fit printers with the little holes on the side there, to print it out on. I still have the form fit paper with me here. And so we sat down, did that work, wrote it out, an outline, and then set it aside. And both got busy with our careers. Renee was an educator, elementary teacher and principal the last half of her career. I had my own company doing diversity consulting. We got very, very busy. In 2006, Renee was diagnosed with cancer. And we knew that was going to be a lifelong struggle for both of us and for the family. And she managed it very, very well for about 7 years. 2013 is when she passed from cancer. And that set me back, obviously, for, I would say, an entire year. And after that year, I kind of came back out of the fog and started organizing stuff and going through stuff. And in going through some old papers, I found the outline for the book. And it brought a smile on my face immediately, but also I was kind of a little bit upset that our kids have grown up and our kids have had kids, but this book we talked about was still an infant. Nothing had been done with it. And so I said, I need to write this. I need to finish this book as a legacy for Renee and for us. I thought about that, but at the same time, it's been a year since I really focused on marketing my company, doing business. I got to replace Renee's income. All these things were also coming up at the same point in time. I don't have the time to do this, I was saying to myself. And so I sat down one night and I prayed about it. All the things were mine there. And I woke up at 4 a.m. and the only thing left on my mind was finishing the book. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. And so I set about to finish the book, which I did. And it took me several years of working around my projects and full-time work to get it done. But once it was done, it is truly a legacy to us and to the journey that we took to get to this role we call, parenting for our kids and now our grandkids as well. It's a long story, but that's how it all came about.
Yeah. Well, and even if you chose not to publish that, just even for your kids and your grandkids to be able to say, hey, we did this together, and almost as a gift to them, even if it had never gone beyond that, like that in itself is a real honor to Renee and to her legacy and to the role that she played in their lives.
Well, Jody, it's funny you mentioned that because the first book we wrote was called Family Treasures. And it really was something we did for our kids. And in Family Treasures, we took a series of questions, relationship questions, and both of us responded to the questions. Questions like, where were you born? What was your family life like? When did you all meet? When was your first kiss? All the questions people asked about our relationship. And we answered those questions and we called it, his story and her story. And so she had a page and I had a page on each one of those questions. We typed it all up and had it bound and covered, and we sent it off to our kids on Christmas as a Christmas gift. And so they've all read the book, of course. All the grandkids know all the stories as well about where we went to college and how we got there and who mentored us, the whole 9 yards there. So yeah, we did that for the first one. The second one needed to be a little bit more substantial because I really wanted to be something that people could use not just as something to read about parenting, but to really learn how to do parenting. That was the main goal there.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things kind of coming back to this book, which is actually your third one then, right? Your third parenting book, is what I was intrigued by are the stages that, I think if you were to ask people what are the stages of parenting, I think that it would go similar to life, kind of the life stages that most people tend to think about. But I was really intrigued by the four stages that you share. Share with folks what the four stages are, and then we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper into each one of them.
Well, when I started writing the book on parenting, we started in the basic place we all start with the kids and raising the kids and getting them prepared for life, et cetera. And as an engineer, everything with me is a process. And so I looked at that as the middle of the process. We're starting in the middle here. So this process starts way, way back when you first start your relationship building piece there. And so we divided up into the four stages. The first stage is laying a strong foundation for parenting, for being a parent. And in that first phase, it gets to things like knowing who you are as an individual. It gets to having a life plan and other things as well. But that first stage is there. The second stage is around preparing for children. First was just yourself, and now you're going to integrate someone else into this whole process here. So now the two of you all coming together, how did you all build a relationship, a team, where now you are prepared for that first child? You've talked about things like how you're going to raise them and your parenting style and discipline and other things as well. You have come to some kind of agreement on how you're going to do that. So you're prepared now for that next stage, which is raising the child. And raising the child is a typical place you find most parenting books will stay most of the time, about all the tips and tools, what you do to raise a child effectively, et cetera. And the last stage, it's almost impossible to get to the last stage, but thinking about the last stage, unless you are gotten to that point in time where you are a parent or a grandparent even, or you are in that senior citizen kind of mode, because it's all about it's about making life memorable, making parenting life memorable. It's about the legacy, the traditions and things you do, and how important those are as a cement, a glue that brings and holds the family together generation after generation. So those are those four stages that we talk about in the book there.
And folks, you can see why I was so intrigued, because the first two are before you even have kids. Right? And that was what really intrigued me, because just as you said, I think a lot of people just kind of jump into it. And while my husband and I weren't together as long as you were, we had a lot of those discussions before we got married, before we had kids, especially me. I mean, I was the child of parent educator. So obviously his views on parenting would make a big deal. And interestingly enough, not everybody knows this, but my husband's degree is in engineering physics. And his, yeah. So I don't know if I've ever told you that before. And I really credit him with helping me discover and figure out the universal blueprint system, which is what's unique about my book. And that even though I had parenting educators for parents, even though I was teaching parenting and had a TV show, my kid was only 15 months old, and things just kind of fell into my lap that I was doing this, and I was just kind of keeping up with it. I would still get frustrated and call him, and he'd be the one that would remind me of these questions that I taught in my system, and that was how I came up with the system. So I think having someone where you're balancing not only that logic, but the love and the some of the psychology and all of that, I think it makes a really nice balance, because some folks are very much on the emotion side or the analytical side, but that's not necessarily the same as logical or systematic. And so that was one of the things that really intrigued me, that I found similar, but I really liked your emphasis on those first two stages. So if we could, I'd like to dive into those first and a little bit deeper, because I do find that not many people have really explored that, and I think it's really valuable to do that.
Let's go right ahead. Yes. And I have to comment on your relationship with your husband there. It sounds like my family as well, because I'm analytical in my family. Renee was the relational one. We talk about those two styles and why, if you really work with it effectively, it works very, very well. Renee would think of all kind of wonderful things to do with our kids, creative things to do. I would figure out a way to make it happen. How do we make that happen? How do we do that? How do we fit into a weekends? We can go off to Chattanooga or wherever and get back in time for work on Monday. So yeah, it worked out extremely well.
Yeah. Yeah, they say opposites attract. And yes, there's times where the ways our brains operate differently might, I don't even want to label it conflict, but just not be similar. But there's, yes, like you said, there's ways that you can make that actually very compatible, balance each other out. Yeah. So let's start with stage one. Dive in a little bit more to stage one, which you call laying your foundation, which also is laying the foundation building toolbox in Parents Tool Shop starts with parenting styles, which you don't actually cover till the second. So yeah, so for people who are familiar with one, it's a little bit different with yours. So share for us that first stage before you ever have kids. How do you lay the foundation before you ever even have kids?
Okay, let me walk you through how I got there and how it makes sense to me. I stepped back when doing the research, looking at how do you really prepare yourself for a parenting role or for even the relationship role first. One of the things that jumped out at me was the fact that self-esteem plays a big role on who you are as a person, but also who you will be as a parent as well. What I found in the research was that people with low self-esteem often gravitate towards a parenting style that's very rigid, controlling, one where they have strong rules and regulations. The rules must be followed very, very clearly, very forcefully, enforced as well. And that parenting style you might remember from decades past and generations past, but we still see that style today in many, many places in our society. But that was that style growing out of our personality, out of our self-esteem. People with high self-esteem, the research said, are more likely to be able to have a parenting style that's more open, more collaborative. They work better with others as a team. They engage their kids in a different way. The kids are involved in family meetings. Every person has a voice. Every voice counts, kind of thing. That's how we did it in our house. And it worked very, very well for us and for our kids. And so I looked at that as one of those foundation pieces for establishing a parenting style, because it's going to impact who you are and who you can be as a parent. So in that first stage, getting to know yourself first, working on yourself first as the first person involved in this parenting process was stage number one. The second part, working on yourself, is having a life plan. What is your plan for your life? What do you want to, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? Where do you see yourself being as an individual at that point? Not just a parent, but your lifestyle, your career, your whatever you want to do and be, creative things you have in your mind you want to do someday, play the guitar or whatever. Those kind of things you want to kind of clearly understand up front there, because ideally the third piece of this laying the foundation is now getting that person involved with you, getting the right mate. We oftentimes spend a lot of time focusing on the wrong things when it comes to finding a mate. And I know that is true, because in America, nearly half of the marriages end in divorce. And the reason is because we oftentimes focus on the wrong thing. We find someone who, we say we want this person as our partner because we like something about him or her. We get the person because of who they are as opposed to what they can do with me as an individual. You want someone in your life who can support you along the way, as opposed to saying, I want to marry a millionaire. What you really might need is someone who can support you to achieve the goals you have for your life in your plan. You talked about it earlier here. That person may have no riches, no wealth, but the ideal person to use to help you move your plan forward during your lifetime. So focus on the right thing. So help with them focus. And again, my background, I was a diversity trainer for 30 years. So I have a lot of tips and tools that I use in our training there that I've modified for the book. So almost every one of these pieces has a tool attached to it that we use to help people not only talk about parenting and talk about developing a plan, but a tool to help you do that and do it very quickly and very effectively. So those three things are the key big three things in the first part of the process there in terms of laying a strong foundation.
And even if setting those goals is so valuable, the process of doing that, even if you end up changing your mind later. I mean, what I planned on doing before I had kids, very career oriented. I thought, oh, I would never be a stay at home mom. I would be very career oriented, all that. And everything changed when I fell in love with my baby. So I actually became a mom at home. I started a mom at home nonprofit group that went for 25 years. I'm like, it completely changed my life. But the process of having goals and setting them and tracking them and knowing what you want and what those values are, a lot of couples, one of the top reasons, aside from money issues, are that a lot of couples will break up is over parenting. So if you don't
Right.
discuss those things, before you're even married, then you can end up with conflicts that could have been avoided, or that you could have been thinking about that in terms of choosing your mate. So I love the fact that your parenting book also covers choosing your mate initially, so that you're
Right.
thinking ahead about them as a parenting partner, and seeing how, if you never have an argument, that's actually not good. You want to find out, like, how do we work through our conflict, and are we able to listen and compromise, and all those important kinds of things that just make a solid relationship but also make really great parents.
And we did all that during those first 10 years before we got married. And so
Yeah.
we really were a step ahead of most people.
Yeah, you really were. Most people don't have 10 years with you meeting so early.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Now my daughter's that way. She married her high school sweetheart.
Oh, that's
So
great.
they've been together. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think she was maybe 15 or 16 when they met. So yeah, yeah.
Right.
And yeah, so they were very much ready. So that second stage, so you're married. So still don't have children yet, but now you're intentionally preparing for kids is your second stage. So tell us a little bit more about that, because obviously focusing on things we should be doing even before that first child is born. So share
Right.
with us what that would include.
The main thing here is you selected a mate, you have a person that's walking with you in this journey. We talk about the parenting team. So oftentimes your parenting team is yourself, your partner. It could be your parents, your grandparents, friends are also part of that team. But getting your team on the same page is the bottom line what we have here. Making sure that you have walked through and talked to things like parenting style. How are we going to raise our kids? What is the style that we gravitate towards, and what is the style that we want for our family? We can both agree on. One of the things, one of my favorite chapters in the book talks about elephant parents and eagle parents, uh, two different ways in which we raise our kids. And if you think about it, if you go into reading about those two species, you see they're very, very different what they do. An elephant family there, the calves, the female calves, live their lifetime with their parent. So the female never leaves home. She stays there. She helped raise the future calves down the way as well. They find their way in terms of creating a pack. They mourn the death of one another. They create very, very strong bonds. But the child stays home with the parent, but also have a parenting role, quote unquote, as she moves forward. That's quite different from the eagle, where the eagle builds their nest on high cliffs or high up in the trees, and they lay a few eggs every year, and the eaglets take a few months to develop fully. They allow us to stay in the nest while they're developing, but once they're ready to leave, they are asked to leave politely or not so politely. In some cases, they are actually forced out of the nest. And once they're forced out, they're not allowed to come back because they're preparing that nest for the next year for the eaglets that will be coming up to be born. So two different styles, elephant versus eagle. What often happens is if we don't have those discussions early on, when that child is born, I'm assuming your style is like mine, and she's assuming my style is like hers. And if you're an elephant and I'm an eagle, we've got problems because you want your kids to stay home forever, and I can't wait till they leave. And when they become teenagers, that's when the problem actually starts. One of my siblings, my oldest brother, actually divorced his wife late in life. They had 5 kids, and the mother wanted all the kids to stay home, and he just could not take it and left. But that's a common kind of issue that comes up where we didn't discuss how we're going to raise our kids, and now we're faced with a decision we got to make without any tools in place to make that already pre-planning on how to make that decision. Renee and I, again, had those discussions early. We knew what we wanted early on. We told our kids what we wanted early on, so they knew as well. And so we were able to manage that issue. But laying a strong foundation, preparing for kids, really gets to not just that, but also communication style, making sure that we have managed how we're going to communicate both with ourselves and with our kids as well. And issues of trust, building trust between our team, myself and my partner. What do we need to do to make sure you trust me, I trust you? Honesty, integrity, all those things are not just talked about, but are actualized. And we have value statements around that in the house that we've developed that we can both agree on. So those are the kind of things we look at in that middle piece there in terms of preparing for the child. You want to make sure, bottom line, that we are fully prepared now. We know who we are, how we're going to raise our kids, how we do that effectively, so we both can agree on the style there, and we do it with honesty and integrity along the way.
Yeah. I think most people, when you think about preparing for your child, that's you pull out the what to do while you're expecting, and parents read a stack of books, just about the first year or two preparing for their baby, when that is actually one of the shortest periods and very unique. It's a very unique period of time, babyhood. And then you've got about 12 or so years of
Right.
kind of in the dirt parenting, but always thinking, and I think that most people don't think about the teen years and the early adult years, the young adult years, where they are launching, and do we kick them out of the nest? And because there's kind of a middle point in there. They don't have to stay home forever, but not necessarily kick out of the nest, and they're never welcome home. As in, kind of soft launches are kind of nice, and I think we saw this with the pandemic of young
Right.
adults launching, but then they're able to come home, not permanently, but that there's a little bit of a soft spot as they launch. And it depends where you live too. I live in Ohio, but I also do trainings for San Diego, and I've had a lot of conversations with parents about how in the world are your children able to afford to launch and be independent in a place that is so expensive to live. Yeah, roommates and those kinds of things, but sometimes they do have to come back for periods of time. But there's still that long-term goal is still for them to launch. So, and that is healthy, right? Like the
Exactly.
healthy launching is what we're supposed to be helping them do.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think that a lot of times people don't think about teenage and young adult, not only from the launch standpoint, but also there's a lot of things that people will do when their kids are little. And you may be getting into this as we head into the next section, like bribes and rewards and things like that they work on little kids, but they can actually cause a lot of problems later. And also some of those controlling things, well, it might work well when they're younger, but then you get rebellion when they're teens. And if people aren't aware of not just going for the quick fix and just thinking what's the next step I'm going to, and that's all the farther they think ahead, but really thinking long term, because these parenting styles really have a lot of long term outcomes, and they need to be aware of what those are and choose the one they want and work towards being able to be effective with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
with the parenting styles, the elephant, the eagle are all different ends. We call it continuum, a long continuum where one end is the
yeah.
elephant, the other end is the eagle. What you want to do in your relationship is find that middle ground, that place where you both can agree. This is the style we want. It won't be exactly elephant or exactly eagle. Somewhere in the middle there is where we're going to wind up in our house.
And there's that consistency with in Parents Tool Shop. It's the permissive on one end and the over controlling on the other end.
Right.
The 5 different parenting styles research has identified, and the one in the middle called balanced parenting is the one that research has identified as being the most effective. So being clear on what that is can be really helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where those early discussions come in, while you're doing all this before the child is born. So you've already discussed this. When that child turns 18, 19, 20, when the child is born, what's going to happen at that stage. You prepared for it. And knowing it's going to happen prepares you mentally for it as well, and prepares the child mentally for it as well. So we're all better served by that.
And you're also being more intentional in entering into the parenting journey, or being intentional about it, instead of just, oh, well, I turned out okay. I'll just do whatever my parents did, and we'll figure it out as we go along. All kids need is love. Well, actually, no. Like, they need more than just love. There's guidance, and there's lots of other things that they need. So being able to think about that ahead of time is just so valuable.
Yes, I agree. Totally.
So heading into the third stage then is now we have kids, so raising kids.
Right.
This is usually where where most parents do focus their attention, is once they have kids. So since you've already done so much work with folks already then in through the book, through stage 1 and stage 2 to prepare them for this, how does that stage look different or similar for you?
It looks a little bit similar to what you find in most parenting books in terms of the kind of areas they focus on. The thing that is most different, I think, for me and for the book is being an engineer. Everything, like I said, is a process. So, as opposed to trying to identify every possible situation and how do you address that situation, we talk about tools. What are the tools you can use that can be used universally for situations? And finding the right tools is the key, and then finding a way to make those tools accessible mentally for yourself and for your family is the second part. To give you an example, one of the things in this area is like issues of making good decisions, decision making kind of things I think every high school, every middle school should be teaching their kids. Those tools are not taught. I had an example. I had a situation. First off, I have 10 grandkids, ranging in age from 23 years old to 3 years old. And so that whole spectrum is covered by one or the other. And one of my teenage grandkids, we were talking on the phone one day, and had just been chewed out by her mother for making a bad decision about something. And I talked with her, tried to counsel her a little bit, and I said, well, come on by the house, let's sit down, let's talk privately, because you can't have a private conversation in her house with all the other kids mingling around. A few days later, she came by, but before she came, I went online and did some research around decision making and problem solving. I found this wonderful, wonderful tool on parenting, on decision making, called the STEP process, STEP. I love this process. It's very simple, very easy, very straightforward, easy to remember. And I use it to help guide her through the decision-making process and help her understand about it. When she came by, I asked her about decision-making, and she was very, very downtrodden to the point where she had that one example, and then she said, this always happens. I said, give me another example. And she gave me a second example. I said, okay, what I see is it's not that, and she was saying, I can't make decisions. It was like, it was a fatal flaw that she felt she had within herself. Decision-making was just not something she could do. And so I share with her the STEP process. STEP is a 4-stage process. S stands for say the problem. T is think about possible solutions. E is explore consequences, big one. And then P is the pick a solution. And when I share the
so
process
that's like
with
the
her,
facts. So that's like facts listening in Parents Tool Shop.
oh yes,
Yeah. F is focus on feelings so that they can work through their feelings, which you did by asking her to come
right,
over, asking open-ended questions to
yes,
help her figure out what the real issue was. And then the exploring alternatives is to brainstorm multiple
mhm,
ideas, evaluate the ideas, which is looking at the consequences,
right.
and then choosing a solution, and then even kind of walking them through it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I put this in the book. I gave him credit as well for the process, and shared it with my grandchild. And her eyes lit up, and she said, "I can see what I'm doing wrong. I do
Hmm.
1 and 4, and I
Yeah.
skipped the middle ones." I
Yeah.
said, "Yes."
Yeah.
And so,
And part of that too is, the way that the brain develops, that logical part of the brain doesn't start developing until 6 and it doesn't finish until 25.
wow,
So teenagers are still developing that
right,
prefrontal cortex where they have that higher level functioning. And so walking them through, a lot of times parents will give advice rather than doing what you
help
did,
them
is
find what
walking
they
them
do.
through the process of it
Mhm,
so that they learn how to make decisions. And the more they make decisions, the better they're going to get at it. Whereas when we give advice, it kind of gets into the cycle of dependency,
exactly.
relying on someone else to solve it for them, and then they never get any practice at doing it.
Well, like you said earlier, we're on the same page when it comes to a lot of
Yeah,
issues here.
yeah,
When I
yeah.
shared that with her, it's like her eyes lit up, her whole demeanor changed. It's like she figured out that she can make good decisions. She just needed the right tool to
Mm-hmm.
do it. And so with the tool, she was prepared, she was ready, she's doing fine now. But yeah, things like that will be covered in that section. Things around, one of my other favorite ones is around young kids, undivided attention. There was a commercial on TV that I saw a couple of years back during football season where the husband had young kids at home running around asking questions and so forth. And he pulls out his phone and he's able to pull up internet and he could watch the football game while with his kids, do both at the same time. And I'm saying, no, no, no. What your child wants is undivided attention. That's so critical.
And they need it.
And they need it.
They need it. It isn't a matter of spoiling. Yeah, it's not a matter of spoiling them. I think a lot of people think that that's going to spoil them, or that, that it actually is a need, and that attention helps their brains develop instead of looking at a screen.
Right. And what I say for them is, do you love your kids? Everyone would say, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I say, well, how do you show love? How do you show love to your teenagers, to your adults? How do you show love to your 2-year-old, your 1-year-old? Well, for them, undivided attention is showing them love. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do that, they're missing out on that piece there.
It's being present.
It's being present in their world. But you don't have to be there forever. They don't want you there forever. They invite you to the tea party. They don't want you to stay. They just want you to come and sit for a few minutes and leave. They can go back to their tea party with their regular little friends there. So being able to do that and do it effectively, I think is important. So things like that we do touch on. But we try to give people tools they can use to manage themselves through all kinds of situations along the way. And one of the things in there that I like is the age-appropriate responsibilities. Walking through the process of at what age should kids have certain responsibilities and why, and how do you figure that out? And it's different for every child kind of thing. But you have, again, a tool to help you walk through that whole process there as well. So similar to what you find in other books, I think the main difference, again, are the tools that come to me through my training that I've done for many, many years in a whole different area there.
Yeah. And universal skills you can find just about, you can find them in good places. So you'll usually find that they can be similar to what others are teaching. It's more a matter of how you teach it that's unique.
Right.
Yeah. And in a memorable way that maybe the people can remember and follow in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, Parents Tool Shop has tons of acronyms and easy ways of remembering the system and the process. Yeah, so that people can, like the ABCs of first aid, so that you learn it often enough that then when a problem arises in a matter of seconds, you can walk yourself through the universal blueprint and know exactly why your child's doing what they're doing and how to respond.
Right, and it's so important to make it easy to access it mentally.
It isn't, while things can be complex, if you understand what's happening and why it's happening, it can actually be easier to figure out. It's not necessarily simple to do, but it still takes a lot of skill to do it. So I was especially intrigued then, if you're ready to move on to 4, about making parenting life memorable, because my original thought when I saw that there were 4 stages is that this would be parenting adults, which I think is very different. And as a grandparent and a parent of adults, I'm sure you would agree, it's a whole different ballgame. The things that you kind of have a right to speak up about and set your foot down or whatever when they're still in your home is different than when they're adults and it's their decision. And so that's like a whole other ballgame. I've often felt like that could be a whole book, or grandparenting can be a whole book.
Agree. Yes.
But the making parenting memorable, where kind of the focus is kind of making everything a great day, or kind of your focus on the future, more like creating a legacy, I think might be the way that I think of it. So share with folks what your ideas are for that.
When I started writing that part of the book, I thought about just talking about some of the trips we had made and things we had done with our family. And the more I wrote about it and thought about it and looked at it, it was more than just things we did with the kids. It was the legacy we created, the traditions we created as well, and how all of that was the cement, the glue that brought the family and kept the family together. And so making life memorable is what it wound up being in terms of the title there. I hear a lot of people talking about saving up for that big vacation for the family. We're going to take our family, we're going to go back to the old country. We're going to visit the place where your fathers and grandfather and their pop grew up and raised. And it's going to take us, 5 years, 10 years to raise the funds to make that happen. And I'm saying that's nice to do. It's important as well, but you don't have to wait for that big vacation to make a big impact on your kids. In fact, the main reason why you should not wait is because your kids would only be kids once. And so when they're 3, 4, 5, and 6, they need that semen, that glue as well, as they will when they're 12 or 13, when you have the funds to go on that big trip. So finding ways to make every day, every year, a memorable experience for your kids is extremely important. When I first got married, Renee and I went to high school together, went to college together as well. My freshman roommate became one of my best friends. He married someone from our class as well. So we're 4 of us together, all Clark College graduates, all living in Atlanta, all struggling, trying to make ends meet. They lived on one side of town. I lived on the other side of town. And one year we stayed in touch. We said, we just need to get away. Can we come by your house and just spend the weekend? Sure. So we packed up our clothes, packed our bags and our 3 kids and went over to their house and we spent the weekend there, had a great time. A month later, he's calling me saying, hey, we got to come over there. Fine. So we started doing that for the first 2 years. That's all we did, back and forth between the 2 houses. Memorable experiences, but also I just talked to my kids recently about how we help create the friends that our kids had by sharing our friends and their kids with them. So we knew who some of their best friends were. Even today, some of the best friends that kids have are friends of our coworkers, our classmates, and others are our best friends, people who we know how they're raising their kids, we know their values and similar to ours.
Yeah.
That means a whole lot.
Yeah.
So we created
can I share my?
Yes.
Let me do. I'll share something similar. When I started that nonprofit organization for moms at home, it quickly grew into not just moms at home, but dads, and even if you're not stay-at-home parents or whatever. And we used to go on activities with the kids and play dates, and as the kids grew up and went into school, we didn't do so many things during the day because they were in school, but we still stayed in touch. And so many people over the years have said, those were my best friends and we stayed together. And still my best friend is from, and our kids have grown up together, been in each other's weddings. And that was where I first started. That was the group that first asked me if I would teach parenting classes, because we wanted to kind of be a support for each other.
Right.
So it really does make a difference. And anyone who has friends that don't raise their kids like them will tell you how stressful it is to be around them.
Right.
Yeah.
We went from going from house to house to going from city to city. Our most favorite city was Gatlinburg, Tennessee, up in the mountains, nice vacation area. We would go up there between Christmas and New Year's every year for about 10, 15 years running. Kids loved it. We go with Larry's family as well. Just had great time. But the way it had an impact, they talk about it all the time. But then my kids, all 3 of them are married. Larry has 2 kids. His kids are married as well. I got a call a few years back from Larry's child saying, we want to go to Gatlinburg, because they're all married. They talk to their spouse about Gatlinburg. None of the spouses had been there and experienced what they had experienced. We want them to understand what was the experience growing up. So we got on the phone and got online and found a place up there, found a big 6-bedroom house up in Gatlinburg, huge place. We all stayed together, about 20 of us, had a wonderful time. But now
that sounds like fun.
The issue of traveling together as 2 families is now 6 families, and it's gone now from our generation to the next generation,
cool.
to their kids as well. So laying that strong foundation is important, and creating things that kids can look back upon and let them become stories that are told over and over again, and things that shape their lives down the road is what you're trying to do. And again, thinking about that day one. In our house, excuse me, we lived in Atlanta, and we used to say on weekends, any place within 4 hours drive was fair game for us to go to on the weekend. Friday, leave work, get on the road, we'd travel 4 hours to Chattanooga, to Charlotte, to Macon, to Savannah, wherever. We'll have a plan in place for things to do, which Renee, of course, found the things to do and where to do it. I'll figure out just how to make it happen and get it into our time frame there. But we went every month we were going someplace for
And
a
that's
weekend.
saying something because you all didn't have the internet the entire time either.
We did not.
I
No.
remember before the internet, so I remember triptychs and AAA
AAA.
books and all those
We all
things.
had AAA. Yes,
Yeah,
that's what we
yeah.
used. Exactly. We actually drove across country 3 times using triptychs.
Wow.
From Georgia to California twice, and from Washington, D.C. to California once.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are huge trips.
Those are big trips. A lot of planning.
Yeah, yeah.
And they worked out well. My family was in California, so we go visit
Oh,
them.
okay. Oh, nice.
But yeah, that's what we talk about here in terms of making life memorable, doing those things that are gonna create lasting impressions on individuals, give them memories that they can share with their kids down the road, and give them ideas about how they can do the same with their family, even
Yeah.
those early years when they're struggling financially.
Yeah, because I think that there can be an assumption that, oh, well, you must have had money to be able to do that. But there are ways that,
No,
yeah, that you can create memories. Yes, now today with gas prices, okay. But still, you were talking a little bit earlier about even about like whatever your historic roots are of, and I was just thinking about, during the pandemic we were doing a lot of vacationing via internet. You want to go to Greece, well, you can get online and you can actually take a tour that way. So
right,
there are things, if you
right,
do have internet, or there's ways that you can do things. And certainly I know that the stuff that we would talk about back in the day when a lot of us were single income families, so that we could be home with our kids during those important young years. And yes, we were privileged that we were able to do that, but we were on a very tight budget as a result. So yeah, there are ways of being able to do that.
exactly. One other thing I focus on in that section is use of humor, using it liberally. Finding a way to bring humor to situations is extremely important, very effective as well, and also can really kind of shape the lives of individuals. Renee, we had 3 kids, and all of them had chores. Everyone had to wash their own clothes typically when they were growing up. And she had a problem with the kids overloading the washing machine. And of course, overloaded, it stops. She's got to figure out how to get it back working again. She got tired of talking to the kids about don't overload, don't overload. So finally, she put a note on the refrigerator, on washing machine. I'm reading to you for a second here. It says, "Dear Shackelford kids, this is the washing machine speaking. Dear Shackelford kids, I am old. I simply cannot take large loads that I could when I was younger. I was born in 1978, and this note was 1988. Um, I am 17 years old," it says. "Give me a light load and I will be okay. Overload me and I will just stop. Love, your faithful washing machine."
That's great.
The kids saw the notes, they just fell out laughing, but they never overloaded the washing machine again afterwards.
Yep. Yep. And notes are a great way of not nagging, and,
Right,
and your wife recognized that. It's like,
right,
I'm kind of tired of hearing myself.
right,
That's a time for a quick reminder, whether it's one word
right,
or a note or a signal. So, and yeah, bringing humor into that is definitely, notes are a good way of being able to do that. And I love the fact that she had the washing machine speaking.
right.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one more story. In our book, one thing we have is Master Parenting in Practice, which are short stories of things that have happened over time. It relates to whatever the chapter is talking about. And one of the stories I share in there is about me taking my 3 kids who were very, very young to lunch one day. And went to a restaurant. They had balloons, stuff for the young kids. So my son was very, very young, 3 or 4 years old. They gave him a balloon, helium filled. And we were in the car, 3 kids in the back, I'm in the front. And I'm hearing this noise back there. Andre keeps saying, "Dion, stop, stop." I said, "Dion, what are you doing?" And Andre says, she said, she's going to pop my balloon. I said, "Dion, leave his balloon alone. You all, it's quiet time back there, quiet." So it was quiet for a few minutes. Next thing I know, I'm turning into our subdivision, turning past the tennis courts, but we all walk up to the tennis courts and walk back home every day. Uh, get to the tennis courts and I hear this pop. Ah! I knew what had happened. I stopped the car, pulled over next to the grass, and I said, "Get out! All three of you, get out!" Put them out of the car, pulled off, and went on. And I look in the rearview mirror, and I see Dion on the grass just dying, laughing, and Andrea is standing there crying, and Lenise is standing there as a middle child, not sure whether she should console Andre or laugh with Dion. It was hilarious.
Just shocked.
And Renee says, where are the kids? I said, I put them out of the car. And I explained it all to her, and she's laughing too. And, 5 minutes later, they're walking back in. But I tell that story because, most parents, you've told your kids to be quiet. It's quiet time. You told her at the bottom of the balloon, she pops the balloon anyway. The temptation is to hit the child or to stop the car and get in her face and chastise her. Either one of those would have made for a very, very tough situation for everybody. The way I handle it, this becomes a story now that is told at birthdays every year, and everyone's laughing because we used humor instead of harsh punishment to get the point across.
Yeah, and you were also close enough to your home that wasn't an unsafe thing. It's not like you left them out in the middle of the desert or something.
They walked through the tennis courts all the time. So
it was within walking distance that they knew. And they were together, and so, So now, granted, the story might have had to have gone different if you weren't, but that was the circumstance, and so you were able to follow through. I was trying to
find a humorous way to deal with it if we were farther away as well. So, yes.
Well, I'm paying attention to our time here. We're getting kind of to our last couple of maybe 10 minutes or so. So as we first of all, thank you for kind of that overview and diving into what each of those stages are, so that we can give folks before they buy the book, because we're hoping that they do, a chance to even be thinking about that and seeing the value of diving into that a little bit. And thanks for sharing some of the excerpts from it and like the note, and so they kind of get an idea of some of the practical tools in there. If you could kind of maybe pick maybe kind of one takeaway or kind of a big picture takeaway for folks, what is your hope that folks will take away from growing into your parenting role?
When I was writing the book, I would take time off and just go up into the Georgia mountains, or in one case, a cruise ship or whatever, and just get away from everything and spend some quality time writing. And I was up in the Georgia mountains one weekend, and I went to a little local restaurant, had a little bar with food kind of thing. And I'm sitting there eating, and there's a lady sitting next to me. We had to talking. And I was talking about the book and about the parenting and so forth. And I forget what we were talking about, but I was describing one part of one chapter in the book. And she sat there and started crying. And I was trying to understand why. And she says, I've got kids. I've really screwed up. I've messed up. I've messed up their lives. I've ruined them for life. And I started thinking, it doesn't matter what you've done, where you are in your parenting journey, how crazy your upbringing was, or what you've done so far in your parenting process, the tools you may have missed, or the things you didn't get exactly right. We can all be better parents. We can all be great parents, starting today.
It's never too late.
What I want people to get from the book is that you can start today, no matter where you are on the journey, and start developing better tools, better habits in terms of how to raise your kids more effectively. You can't go back and change the past, but you can definitely move forward with a different future.
And that can help heal.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes moving forward in a better way and knowing how to heal that, but moving forward can help things heal from the past. Yeah.
Like with your work, when you give people great tools, we have tools in the book there. What they find is, I thought I couldn't do this, like my grandchild, but now I know I can because I have the right tools. It wasn't me. It was the fact I had not been exposed to the right tools to do it and do it well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I want to get from the book, the fact that you can start today, be a great parent, no matter where you start in this journey. And make sure they understand that the book, I see the book not as a book that you read, but one that you study. It's just a tool book in a sense, like your tools you have there.
Yeah.
Lots of things that allow you to understand the concept and the process, but then practice it as well while you're there and develop yourself along the way.
And that's one thing I see, and that's part of why I wanted to feature your book, because you also do something that I really make a commitment to parents to do, and that is I'll never tell you not to do something without telling you how to do it instead. And
Right.
that's the one thing I hear so much from so many parents. It's like, okay, so you're telling me what to do and why, and the philosophy and the theory, and I want to know how to do it. Like,
Right.
give me the tools. So
Right.
that's one of the things I really have enjoyed
That's
about your book, is to be able
that's
to get
me.
those tools.
Hmm.
So,
Great.
so in your last minute or so, tell us what's next for you and your parenting work. What have you done as you kind of have launched the book, and you're still launching it, but what are some things that you're doing?
When I launched the book, before even launching the book, I created what's called the National Parenting Project because I saw the book as a stepping stone to doing that next step in the process there. I wanted people to read the book and understand it, but I really wanted to do workshops and seminars and retreats around parenting. All that was put on hold with COVID over the last few years. So then I went online with some of those things there, which is good, but it doesn't really get to the heart of what I'm trying to get to in terms of cementing these concepts in on a regular basis over a short period of time, 2 days, a weekend, or whatever. So I want to get back to that in terms of the face-to-face kinds of stuff we like to do in terms of training. But also we've launched an online community. It's part of the National Parenting Project umbrella structure, but it's My Pad is the name of the community. And that's where we talk on a regular basis about issues of parenting. And each month we have a topic we touch on. In fact, this month the topic is self-esteem, one of the first things we talk about here today. And we talk about it, we explain it, we use the tools, etc., and really dive deep into it. So that community is there. But those are things I want to do. And Jody, thanks to you, I'm really looking at some of those tools, being able to offer them. You offered up for me to offer some of those tools on your site there. And I'm looking forward to doing that. I have a few that are developed now to the point where I can share those with you and get those up. But your audience will be able to access some of those tools through your efforts there, which is great. And I appreciate what you've done with me to make that happen, to make this happen as well. This is great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well,
But those are the next things for me.
yeah. And I love supporting other folks who are doing great stuff with parents, because yeah, mine is very much focused on kind of those universal tools, but then there's a gazillion ways that those can be implemented.
Right.
And so yeah, there's so much more that yeah, sure, you can use what I teach to address that, but that's why this is one of those venues where we don't necessarily teach the tools. We talk about the different kinds of challenges that we face and then apply some of those tools to those. So and now I also understand why self-esteem is such a big focus of what you do, because of what you said in the very beginning in terms of us kind of getting ourselves prepared before we become parents too.
Right.
So, and I will add some links when I put this on YouTube. I'll add some links to your site and that kind of thing, so people will be able to find you from watching this. So
Right. Great.
I'll add some stuff on the screen and all that great stuff in post-production. So
Right.
all right. Well, I really want to thank you, Bill, and thanks everybody who came today and was actually rather quite in terms of questions, but of everyone who feel free to contact Bill. I'll include, actually, Bill, why don't you verbally, if you want to give contact information, because I don't want to give out emails or anything on a YouTube link.
The best way to get to me will be through my website, www.nationalparentingproject.com.
Great. All right, and I'll put that on the screen. As you say that, it's going to show up on the video.
Excellent.
So, all right. Well, Bill, I know I'll be talking to you again soon. And those of you who were watching, thank you for coming. And come back again next month. Every month we have a free parenting webinar on Parents Tool Talk. And then I also have one that's trauma-informed, Foster Parents Tool Talk also. So we look forward to seeing all of you again. And I know we'll be bringing back Bill again also in the future, focusing on maybe one or some of the more details, taking a look at those. So
Right.
Thanks, everybody. Take care now.
You're
Have a
right.
good day.
Thank you.
All right, and a good month.